So hi, my name is Shamir. I'm associated with the Gastrointestinal Research Group at the Auckland Bioengineering Institute. I'll be talking about a mathematical model that we have developed for optimizing gastric pacing. So everyone might have heard of what is a cardiac pacemaker is. So it's a device which is implanted into your body to either to deliver an impulse, electrical impulses to either to either to treat the slow heart rate to a normal heart rate or to bring back the fast heart rate to a normal heart rate. A similar approach can be used for treating the stomach motility disorders as well. So let's see how. So I'll be talking about an electrical activity that happens inside the stomach, the related muscle contraction. Then I'll be talking about the gastric pacing, then why we require computational models. Then I'll be briefly describing about my research objectives, my mathematical model, and some preliminary results. So this is the human digestive system, the main function of which is to process the food that we eat and absorb the nutrients from it. So out of this, the stomach, the main function of the stomach is to grind the food particles and break down the food particles into smaller particles and then mix it with the enzymes and acids to proper digestion. So how does that happen? So there happens a muscle contraction which starts from the corpus region and it propagates like in a coordinated manner down to the antrum. And later this mixture of the food particles with the broken food particles is passed on to the intestine for further processing. So what causes this muscle contraction? Well, there is something called interstitial cells of Cajal which excites this electrical activity. And this electrical activity is passed on to the smooth muscle cells which are actually helping the stomach to contract. So these are the recordings that have been obtained. So it's quite significant amount of recording. That's like the range is from minus 65 millivolts to minus 35 millivolts, and the blue one resembles the smooth muscle cells. So my concentration on the ICCs because these are the initiators of this entire process. So this electrical activity is otherwise called as slow waves. The reason is because in human it happens like in 3 cycles per minute, which is very, very slow. What happens if this electrical activity is somehow distorted or gets improper, maybe because of the interstitial cells of Cajal being damaged or dies off or behaves some weird way? Well, that gives rise to abnormal electrical activity. I'm not sure how many of you know about gastroparesis, but gastroparesis has been attributed to abnormal electrical activity. For those who don't know gastroparesis is characterized by delayed gastric emptying, and severe cases include vomiting, stomach pain, and all those stuffs. And mostly patients require like prolonged care and like they have very bad quality of life. It should be noted that the 5 to 10% of diabetes develop gastroparesis, which is considering the present lifestyle. Because of the increasing cases of diabetes, it's going to be a serious issue. So how are we going to solve it? Well, like in the pacemaker, like as a pacemaker for heart, we'll use a pacemaker for stomach. We'll keep it somewhere over there, close to the stomach, and put 2 needles, which delivers electrical impulses. Well, the question is where to put the needles. Well, that's how we come to either to do an experimental study for selecting the position of the needles or come to either a computational study. So for experimental study, that's basically you do experiments on animals. You need to get a pig from the farm and finally you have to kill it, which is not like, and then you have the ethics, then you need to get the ethics approvals as well. Then you have the cost factor as well. Then the other alternative is the computational models, which of course, from our past experience in the cardiac modeling, we found that the computational models were very effective in predicting the pathophysiology of diseased case and normal cases. So my research aim was to develop a mathematical model to simulate a slow wave activity and analyze the effects of gastric pacing on it, or to predict the effects of 2 studies. There was one to predict the effects of fiber directions, and the other one was to predict the effects of different pacing frequencies, or like the frequency at which you are going to input the pulses to the stomach. So the first thing in any modeling study would be to get the experimental data for that. So for that, in the year 2010, our group did an experimental study in which we placed a set of PCBs and we recorded normal slow wave activity. Then what we did was we put 2 electrodes, and we inputted that with specific impulses. And we got the propagation, which is shown by the arrows, as you can see. Using this data, what we did was we developed a finite element model coupled with a cell model. Now, this cell model describes the activity of the ICCs. Well, this was the most complicated part, developing the cell model. And the reaction diffusion equations were solved over it, which are basically elliptical partial differential equations. Which I didn't mention over here because it's kind of complex. Then I did a simulation validation. So what I did was, like, I simulated a normal slow wave activity, and the parameters were matched such that the normal activity matches up with the experimental observation. Then after that, what I did was I put the same protocols that were used in the experiment studies. So the top one shows the experiment, and the bottom one shows the simulation. So I was able to validate and get the almost like pretty good results, which could be further utilized for prediction studies. So I did 2 prediction studies. Which were these ones were done very recently, that is like 2 weeks back. So one was the effects of fiber directions, like that is the preferential conduction direction on the effects of pacing and the normal activity that is coming from somewhere. Say an ectopic activity in a sense like some activity that happens somewhere in the stomach, somewhere down on the stomach, which causes an electrical activity to come from antral to top to the corpus. So that sort of activity can be overcome by if you apply electrical pulses at the top, and that's what's being done here. So it's been applied over top, and this is slowly tries to cover the ectopic activity. So we found that for 2 different cases, there was a significant difference. So we came to a conclusion that a fiber direction played a key role. Then the second thing was we tried to analyze the effects of different frequencies of pulses and plotted that against the time taken to overcome the normal activity. And we found that it starts from the peak and it slowly parallels out. And we found that for optimal pacing frequency for 3.16 natural slow wave activity that is coming from anywhere can be entrained effectively by 3.8 cycles per minute of impulses delivered from a pacemaker or stimulator. So we developed a mathematical model that could showcase the slow wave activity and the effects of gastric pacing. The results were quite interesting, and we were able to get found that the conduction direction is a principle. It plays a key role, as well as the different frequencies. It should be noted that this model is the only model which can realistically simulate the effects of gastric pacing. I would like to thank my supervisors, Dr. Leo Cheng and Mark Tu, for their expert guidance, Burdett Institute for their funding, and Dr. Gredo Grady and Peng Du for their experimental suggestions and helpful advices. Thank you.